In a world with a population of over 7 billion people residing in approximately 194 different countries, how does one identify themselves? Are we solely the product of our parents? Does where we are born as well as where we are raised impact our self-identification? Can our native language, which may differ from our inherited nationality, change our perceived identity? Let's take a look at how these things affect the people of Japan. Japan was a monocultural society until approximately 1543. This is when the first Europeans arrived in Japan. They consisted of several Portuguese who became shipwrecked on the island of Tanega. During this time, trade was prominent on the Silk Road. Due to the overabundance of drugs and influence of Christianity, Japan chose to close their borders to all outsiders. It wasn't until 1852 that the U.S. Navy Commodore Matthew Perry enticed Japan to open its doors to trade once again. And this time, the gates stayed open. With the influx of foreigners to Japan, mixed relations was inevitable. However, the amount of mixed-race children increased during the occupation of World War II. According to a recent article in Japan Times News, in 2013, international marriages made up 3.3% of the total. Government figures showed, or 4 times the 1980 figure. Mixed-race children constituted 1.9% of the total born in 2013.
Due to the increase of foreigners and mixed-cultured children living in Japan, one might assume that Japanese people are adapting to this change, though we found that isn't necessarily true. Presently, there are many mixed-cultured icons seen on TV, movies, fashion shows, magazines, or performing in concerts.
When you ask Japanese people if these icons are considered Japanese, you will see most likely they are. However, there is still a percentage that feel they are not. We did a privately conducted survey of 100 people residing in the Kansai region of Japan, and these are the results.
Here are the stories of 7 individuals who are experiencing multicultural lives within Japan.
Hi, my name is Mary, and my daughter is 10 years old, and she's lived most of her life in Japan.
My name is Hitomi, and I'm 23, and I'm half.
My name is Joel. I have a Japanese wife. We have 3 kids together, and they are half.
I'm Reina. I'm 21. I'm Japanese.
こんにちは、エミリです。18歳です。ハーフです。
My name is Shouta. I'm 18 years old. I'm half.
My name is Kyle. I'm 21 years old and I'm half.
So I'm from Ohio, and my husband is also from Ohio. So we're both from the United States. My daughter was born in the States, and we moved to Japan when she was a year old. My daughter's native language is English, but when she started going to school in Japan when she was 4 years old, she has become like a native speaker of Japanese. She's always attended a Japanese school, so she attended 3 years of kindergarten and 4 years of elementary school.
Do you think that Japanese people consider you Japanese here in Japan?
Recently, no. Most of people think I'm a Native American. I think I have both aspects, Japan and America.
I don't think so. People will tell me, like, because I don't look Japanese,
in Japan, so people would tend to think that I'm more, I guess, American to them, and they won't consider me as Japanese. If I speak Japanese, they'll be like, wow, you speak perfect Japanese. And yes, so no. I consider myself as more Japanese when I'm in like United States and more American when I'm in Japan.
Why is that?
Well, because I think I don't know, that's what people compare me with. I think in Japan, you know, Japanese people look at me, I look different from many Japanese people. And I do, you know, act in a different way as Japanese people. I speak up my, you know, idea when everyone is like more thinking of more like a group identity and stuff. Not that I don't think of any group identity, but I still go for my idea than just cooperating with people. And also, what else?
So you feel that you're more outspoken?
Yes, definitely. And also, I think that's how they compare me. Like, they will compare me with others who are around them. So in Japan, people would think I'm more American than I am Japanese, and when I'm in the United States, I think they, like, even my Japanese friend would consider me as Japanese when I'm around with other Americans.
There's times when they are and there's times when they're not, and I think it also depends a little bit on the way they look. So my first son has very white skin, and so he had more trouble when we first came integrating compared to my second son, who has much tan skin, kind of more Japanese features. He was more readily accepted as Japanese. So my sons are 8 and 6, and my daughter is 4 years old. I want them to develop an understanding for both of the cultures which they'll live in growing up. But as far as like hoping that they'll identify with this culture or that culture, I don't have any preference. It basically, I want them to grow into the kind of adult that they want to be. So if that's a more Japanese form, then that's fine. I can respect that. And if it's more Australian. Actually, my own background, both my parents are English, so I grew up in Australia, but all my family's English. So being Australian was never really that important. But, I guess my first son, his name's Tomo, and the reason I gave him the name Tomo was because, one, in Japanese it's Tomo, so it's a very Japanese sounding name, but in Australia it's a nickname. So if your last name's Thompson, people will call you Tomo. It's like really Australian. And coming from an English family, it's kind of like a sign. It's okay to be Australian. Like it's okay to be accepted as Australian. They attend their local school, Japanese.
I'm not considered full Japanese, of course, because I think the way that I look. However, all my friends consider me just half Japanese. I identify with both. There's certain things in Western culture that I don't feel comfortable with and I don't understand. However, there's things in Japanese culture that I don't understand. I identify with different parts of both, so I couldn't say just one.
思われてると思います。はい。まあそれはまあ日本で育ってきたんで、はい。日本。
見た目では多分外国人って思われてます。自分では日本人の考え方だと思ってます。
Honestly, I say I have both aspects.
So you would say that you're Japanese and Native American? Are you Native American Indian or African American?
Not sure, just I
Okay.
know my father is Black American.
Okay.
No, I say I'm half American and half Japanese in Japan, and I will say half American and half Japanese in the United States as well. I mean, they can tell I'm not fully American and not fully Japanese, so I don't change it.
Definitely, yeah. Even when my kids are communicating with me, I'll pick up on things that they say which culturally would not work in Australia. Like if they use too indirect communication, like if they don't state exactly what they want, they try to talk around it, then I'll pick up on it and say, when you talk to Daddy, you need to tell me what you need, because although it's okay in Japan, your message will get across, other people are thinking about what you need. In Australia, you need to be clearer about the way that you communicate. I guess the time that we live in Japan, it's just natural for them to fall into Japanese ways of doing things, and so most of our lifestyle is Japanese at the moment. So apart from interactions with me, it's pretty much Japanese.
Yeah, I definitely change depending on who I'm talking to. And it also depends on which language I'm speaking as well. If I'm speaking in Japanese, I of course act differently than if I were to be speaking in English.
Do you tell certain people though that you're Japanese and not American, or vice versa?
Yeah, I tend to tell people I'm half Japanese more to Japanese people themselves. I don't know, I guess maybe it's easier for them to feel more comfortable to speak with me if they know I'm half Japanese, whereas just in my opinion in America, it's not as important.
それとも日本人として
はい、そうですね。日本人として多分接すると思います。
いや、あんまり変えることはないと思うんですけど、多分日本にいたら見た目でアメリカ人って思われてるので、多分気をつけるようにしてるのは、できるだけ日本人のようになんか見えるように行動とかはしようとしてたりするときはあります。
Can I ask a question? その日本人のように見えるようにっていうのは違和感とかってないですか？
いや、多分勝手に身についてるようなものなんで。
Well, no, I don't feel that I have. Like I said, my daughter's been going to school for about 7 years now in Japan. And before she entered school, I was really concerned about being treated differently or something might be uncomfortable. But I was really surprised when we visited the kindergarten. The principal was so kind and friendly. And even though my daughter didn't speak Japanese at that time, I said, "Is that a problem?" And she said, "Oh, no, she'll make friends and then she'll be able to speak Japanese soon, so don't worry." And I thought that was really kind, and that was probably the first experience I had. And since then, I feel like, she's been accepted by her peers and always had a good experience at school. So I don't feel like in that regard that we've been treated differently.
Do you and your husband both speak Japanese fluently?
We can speak Japanese.
Okay.
I don't know if we can speak fluently, but yeah, we can speak enough to communicate with the teachers and the other parents.
The neighborhood you live in, do you feel accepted in the neighborhood that you live in?
Well, we live with all foreigners, so yes.
I think so.
Okay.
That's a hard question. I think I do, but I don't know what others thinking. Yeah, I don't know what others are thinking, but yes. Well, to me, yes, I think I'm like fitting okay. I don't think I'm like
not fitting in Japan?
I think for the most part I fit in. Sometimes I have problems with the way I think, but I think for the most part I do fit in, yes.
Okay.
そうですね、まあ日本で合ってるなと思います。はい。
多分ずっと日本にいたんで大体は入ると思うんですけど、見た目だけちょっと、初めは違うなって思われると思う。
I don't really think I explain that too much, but I think sometimes when I see some things on TV, like some variety shows are saying how strange foreigners are doing things, that's when I want to explain things, like that's not strange, that's normal. Everybody's different and has a different way of living. So I think for me that's when I want to explain those things.
So I try to tell them that because they have family in Australia, it's important for them to learn how to act in both cultures. And I guess there's times when they don't feel that they're being accepted in Japan, and I try to support them by telling them that there's also times they're not going to be accepted in Australia. So that's something that they just need to adjust and accept in their life, that they're not always going to be exactly the same as everyone else. Yeah. It's hard to like remove yourself from your own household and look at it from the outside. But because my wife has had so much time in Australia, perhaps we're pretty noisy. Like compared to our neighbours, we're probably the noisiest house. And we eat like a lot of foreign food. So maybe Australian culture is more dominant, but it really is a mix. Yeah. It's a true mix.
Well, for me personally, I think I feel uncomfortable if somebody says that, especially if people point like "gaijin da." I feel really uncomfortable, and I don't know why someone is saying that. But I think outside of that context, I don't really feel so uncomfortable. And my daughter said she doesn't feel uncomfortable when someone says that, so mixed feelings.
Yeah, a lot of times when I was in elementary school and junior high school, especially.
Do you consider them negative words?
I used to.
And why has it changed?
I don't think it's negative now because we have a lot of half American or half European, half Asian countries in Gaidai.
I think it really depends on, again, how they say it. But if they say it in a positive connotation, then I won't get offended or anything. But if they say it in a negative way, I do get offended. Yes.
Yes.
Ever since growing up, I didn't really hear another word for half Japanese people other than hafu. So for me, that's not a negative term. It's almost like I'm proud of that word, even though it does have negative connotations. However, that's never bothered me before. Gaijin, I think it all depends on how you say it. I think that some people own it, like other derogatory words. However, sometimes I can definitely see how someone feels alienated in a country where everyone's the same. If you're called gaijin, it's you're not one of us. So I can see how it can be hurtful.
いや、それは全然ないですね。はい。
なんか 外人って言われるのはなんか自分的にはあんまり嬉しくないっていうのはあるけど、ハーフはそんなに気にしないです。
Not usually, no. But I think if people stare, then I feel uncomfortable and I kind of want to stare back. But no, I don't usually say anything. I think probably people are just curious.
I used to.
And why has it changed?
I don't think it's negative now because we have a lot of half American or half European, half Asian countries in Gaidai.
I actually have, especially in Japan when like little kids, when they see me, they just think that I'm, to them, Japanese kids, to them, I'm a gaijin. So they're like, oh, gaijin, gaijin. And if I speak in Japanese, like when I'm working, they'll be like, oh my gosh, she's speaking in Japanese. Oh, wow, wow. But, and sometimes it is a, struggle for me when they just say gaijin. And I know it's kids, but because they are kids, they're really, what do you call it, like, natural, not natural, what is the word? Like, so, I think innocent. Yeah. So, if they say it in a negative connotation, I really take it as a negative.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel, and or your children?
For me, it's hard watching it because you have little power to change it. But for my kids, there was a time about 2 months after my elder son started at the school he's going to now. He was being called Gaijin daily, and it got to the point where he came home one day, burst into tears. I went to his bed, burst into tears, and he said, "I want to change my face." Yeah. And since then, whenever I say goodbye to him in the morning, like on his way to school, I always tell him like, "Goodbye, I love you," and now I add like, "I love you," and "I love you, Gaijin face." But at the same time, the people that called him Gaijin, none of those kids really became his circle of friends. So, like it was a way for him to work out the important people and the people that he didn't need to listen to. But it was a really hard time. Yeah. And the second son, the one that I said he sort of accepted quicker, I gave him a sandwich in his bento box one day, and he came home that night and he cried. He's like, "As soon as everyone saw my sandwich, they all started calling me Gaikokujin." It's okay, it's alright, your dad's a Gaikokujin, so it's okay for them to call you that. And like, "Did you like the sandwich?" He's like, "Yeah, but I want Japanese bento next time." So, yeah, I think it's hard for them now, but yeah, it's just something they have to accept.
あんま人に言わないんで、そういうことを、はい、だからあんまり言われたことはないですけど。
過去に一度もなかったですか？
まあでも知ってる友達とかにはそうなんやろみたいな、ちょっとなんていうんですか、その冗談でいじられたりはしますけど、そんな、はい、まだでもいじられるぐらいちょっと知ってる子には。
翔太さんは自らお父さんが韓国人だって自分がハーフだっていうことを友達に言わないっていうのがあるんですけど、はい、それに理由は何かありますか？
理由は特にはないですね。別に言う必要もないかなと思ってるんでなんでかって聞かれたら困ります。全然別に誰にでも言えることですけど、はい、強いて言おうとは思わないってだけなんで、はい、
特別な理由があるとかではなく、
はい、もう嫌とかじゃなく全然、はい、そうですね、嫌とかではないんで全然。
怪人はよくあると思います。
How does that make you feel?
まあ、今はもうしょうがないなって思うようになってきました。
I want them to consider me as a person who can speak English. Just they usually think I have lived in America, but I want them to understand that I was born in Japan and I know Japanese language.
So Japanese is your native language,
Yeah.
and you've only lived in Japan?
Yeah.
Just as Hitomi, I think. Not American, not Japanese, but Hitomi, I guess. Than anything as an ethnicity thing. But many of my friends say that first they would think me as half something and half American in Japan. But as they know more about me, they are more like, she's Hitomi than anything else. So, and they, in the end, they actually forget that I'm half something. So, yeah.
Just relate to you as a person.
Yes.
Well, I realize that I can't be just Caucasian and I can never be just Japanese. I think that just the recognition of both ethnicities is kind of what I want. I don't need someone to accept me as full Japanese or full American. I want just someone to realize, oh, you're half, and that doesn't define you as a person.
いや別にもうその人が思うどっちでもいいですね別に、はい、その人が思う通りに思っていただければ別に僕は気にしてないんで、はい。
でもハーフかな多分。
Yeah, one time my daughter was in a playgroup and I went to pick her up and another mother looked at me and was like, her mom's not Japanese. And I was kind of surprised. And I said, yeah, my daughter is not Japanese. We're from the United States. And she was really shocked because she thought my daughter must have Japanese parent because she could speak Japanese so well.
I got bullied when I was a kid.
Do you think it was because of your mixed race culture?
Parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would they call you names?
Kind of strange nicknames.
Could you tell us what they called you?
Since I was black, they identified me as a Jamaican runner, Usain Bolt. Or I usually ignore them.
I don't know, aggravated is the right word, but because I look like this, many Japanese people would expect me to speak, fully speak in English, be able to speak in English, and I have the ability to, use English. But the fact is, it wasn't true. Because my father passed away when I was 8, since then I never spoke English, and I actually tried my best to attain English, but in the end what people would see me is my English like this, and they don't really know how hard I tried to attain English, and that was hard for me and stressful. Yes, but I guess that's what I would have to, I think, face in the future as well.
Like being half Caucasian, there's certain places where, like me, or also my kids, are sort of elevated, like given special preference in ways that we don't really deserve. And then, of course, there's always a group of people who are going to use that to put us down to a lower place. one thing I've noticed is when I have my kids around, people are much more willing to speak Japanese. Whereas when I'm just by myself, they'll treat me more as like, oh, it's a foreigner. And even if I actively speak Japanese, then first they'll sort of like, I don't know what to do. But if the kids are there, they feel more comfortable like accepting me into that circle. Yeah. When we first moved to the area that we were living in, we were like celebrities. Yeah. We moved to this house with, there's no one living next to us. We've got a big veggie patch, hatake, next to our house. And we're right next to the school. So we could hear like all the people walking between our house and the school. And like in the evening, everyone coming home from work, they'll be like, did you hear Gaikokujin moved to this house? That everyone was talking about it for like a month. And yeah, we were like celebrities. It wore off eventually. Actually, I went to play soccer with my boys one night, and these Year 7 girls, they were on the climbing frame behind me, and they were like, oh, he's so cool. He's better at soccer than Beckham. So, I guess like the negativity, apart from like full-out bullying at school, in other places you don't really see it that much, and you see more of like the positive side of things. And I think I see that kind of as negative as well, because I want my kids to like whatever they achieve in life, I want them to earn it. I want them to work hard for it. So yeah, I really try and push, like, even though you're half, you still have to work just as hard as everyone else, if not harder, to achieve what you want to do. Yeah. This is only a really small example, but on the weekend I was inside and my kids were playing outside, and a middle school girl, she walked past, and she stopped and said, "Ah, gaijin ya, eigo shabette." Like, just that assumption, like, so their face is a bit different, so they must be gaijin, and because they're gaijin, they can speak English. I think it's unfair to judge someone just by the way they look. Yeah.
There's lots of things that aggravate me. One particular being, I have a lot of half friends, and I've realized the more Asian they look, the more recognition they have from Japanese people as well as American people. That kind of bothers me, because it doesn't matter of the features you have, both people are half Japanese. Another thing that kind of irritates me is the expectations that you have. I realize that the Japanese media has a lot of half people in the media. They're all beautiful, they're all bilingual, and it puts a lot of pressure on half people in real life to be like that. I feel like I have to be bilingual, I have to understand both cultures perfectly, I have to be this beautiful person, because that's what society tells me that I need to be. I always get, when I speak to my family that lives in Japan, or when I talk to my boss or something like that, a lot of Japanese people will say, "Oh, well, you have Japanese blood, so you should understand." That's not, you know, always the case. There's lots of things about Japan that I don't understand, and just because I'm half Japanese doesn't mean that I will understand said things. There's lots of things about American culture that I don't understand. So it all depends on the person and what they were raised to be. I also don't like about my language skills. I often get into arguments with Japanese people about, "Oh, well, you're half Japanese, you should have grown up with Japanese, your Japanese should be perfect, why don't you understand this aspect of Japanese?" But I was born and raised in America, so I didn't get that exposure. I got some, more so than maybe some other foreigners here, but not as much as I would have liked.
How long did you live in Japan?
I lived in Japan for 1 year when I was in high school. And I moved, I think I was 16 or 17, and I went to high school in Isahaya in Nagasaki. It's really rural. I was the only foreigner. I was lucky enough that my family could speak some English. I knew very basic Japanese at the time, and I had to meet the English teacher of the high school every day after class, and he would help me with my homework. Now, if I were to go, I would have felt bad because I did get special treatment as a foreigner. Oh, he doesn't know Japanese, so let's give him no homework. All my classmates were studying really hard, and I didn't have to do anything. Well, I had a really negative experience in America because I was mixed race, and I'm from West Virginia, and West Virginia is very homogeneous. Everyone is Caucasian. I don't want to make a negative image of West Virginia, but there is a lot of racism there, and I did get racially attacked a couple of times in West Virginia. However, in Japan, I noticed there wasn't that kind of hostility towards me. It was more, I was kind of seen as a pet, less than a person. Like, oh, he's the foreigner. I was often called girls' boyfriends without me even knowing what they were saying. I was called Justin Bieber and Harry Potter because they had never seen a foreigner before. Any kind of discrimination towards me that was aggressive, I don't think I saw because I didn't have the language skills at that time. But it was just a different type of discrimination as opposed to the American type.
Did you respond to any of the negativity you had?
At that time I didn't, because at that time my identity was really messed up. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I identified with. I felt like I was a foreigner in Japan. It wasn't my country at that time, and I felt like I didn't have a right to say anything because it wasn't my country. It wasn't my place, and if they had an image of me, then it must be right. So that's the way I felt, and I was almost depressed. But then when I got back to America, I entered a university and I started studying Japanese. And then as my language skills got better and better, I kind of stood up for myself more. And I was like, hey, you know, this is my language too. This is my country too. I should be able to have a say in what my image is, what my identity is. And so I kind of took that information that I learned in my university in America, and I kind of took it to Kansai Gaidai, and I actually learned a lot about who I am and what I want to be through Kansai Gaidai and the people that I've met here.
いや、そんなのは全然全くないです。はい。
多分友達と一緒にいてなんかふざけてなんかエミリは外人やからなんか人が見てんでとか言われるのはなんかちょっと嫌だなって思うけどいやでも普段は笑って笑って。
I mean, I know you've had an easy time here, but just in general, do you think that in her schooling, and the way that people might have looked at you, that it would have been easier if she was half Japanese or fully Japanese?
What do you think? No.
Have you ever wanted to be Japanese? No? Okay. Has there ever been a time that maybe you have, or your daughter has wanted to be part Japanese or fully Japanese, or in this case, maybe even wanted a Japanese name?
So when my daughter was younger, she asked me why don't I have a Japanese name, and I think I said because we're not Japanese. It's kind of difficult because her name is so much different from all the other kids' names. This is much longer and sometimes it doesn't fit in the boxes. So I think that's been kind of difficult at times. But not now. But not now.
I think so.
For the better?
Oh, better.
That's good.
I think so. For my friends, as I said, they thought that I'm half something, especially half American, when they first met me. But as they know more about me and, you know, hanging out a lot, they consider myself, like me, as a person than anything else. So they totally forget that I'm half something, and when their friends ask, oh, you have a half friend, and finally they realize that they have a friend who is half something, which is me. So in that sense, I think I changed their view of me differently.
So it's only been a year since we've moved here, and we pretty much are like the only foreign family in the 30,000 people in the town that we live in. Of the 30,000 people in the town we live in. And I think like the people closest to us, say the school principal, the first time she met us, she was like really energetic. I mean, she's a really energetic lady anyway, but I think she saw me as like foreigner, therefore I'm gonna be like this super personality, but in reality I'm pretty mellow, so yeah, I think at first people's expectations are like they have like a positive bias, like these kids look foreign, so they should be really outgoing, or they should be really bubbly, or but I think people have come to realize like, oh, it's just another family. Yeah.
Yes. The more Japanese I learn, the more culture I get used to, the more they react in a more accepting way. Before, it was more like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, your dad's Japanese, but you're kind of not Japanese. You don't know Japanese. You don't know the culture. You barely experienced anything while you were there. You're not Japanese. And I was often told by my friends, you're not Japanese. They told me what I was. And I started believing that for a while. But now, it's changed. It's definitely changed to now where it almost doesn't matter anymore. It's not brought up that much anymore. However, I think my image and what I've created over the years has started to become parallel to the image of what Hafu is. This image that the media created of being bilingual, understanding both of the cultures. I subconsciously created that image for myself and followed that image. And sadly, it's become a positive outcome, even though it shouldn't be a positive outcome.
いや、そんなこともない、そんなないですね、僕の中で。
多分ちっちゃい時はお母さんと一緒にスーパーとか行ったらなんか結構みんな見てきたりしてたんですけど、多分最近は外国人の人とか増えてきたんであんまり見られるようにはなってないなって感じてます。
Japan is my home.
I would say yes, since I lived most of the time in Japan. But this is a really weird question, but I would say more of an Okinawan than I am Japanese, because I feel really, really different when I talk to Japanese friends who are born and raised in like mainland Japan. And I feel like I have an identity of Okinawa in me when I'm, yeah. So more of a Okinawa specifically than Japan. Yes.
I think kids adapt really quickly. Yeah. So for the first 3 months, my eldest son was, he was saying like, I want to go back to Australia. It was so much better there. And he actually came 3 months before I came to Japan. So when I came, we moved to the town we're in now. And when we moved there, he said, I want to go back to the town that we're in, like the village way south of Kyoto. So he'd already forgotten about Australia. Then he was just like, I want to go back to the last place I was. And now it's been a year that we've been here. He's just adapted. And my daughter, she's 4, so she was here since she was 3, or just before she turned 3. If I ask her, like, where were you born? She'll say, Australia. But she doesn't remember living there anymore. So, and they all love the Japanese national soccer team, which can't say I'm happy about. But.
When I'm in America, I feel like America is my home, and then when I'm in Japan, I feel like Japan is my home now. It's funny because when I speak to my American family, I always say, "Oh, I'm coming home," and then they say, "Oh, are you when are you coming home early?" I said, "No, I mean I'm going back home to my house." Oh, okay, and they kind of have this kind of disappointment. It always changes. I feel like both can be my home. Maybe America a little bit more because I was born and raised there.
それはもう日本ですね。はい。
多分日本にいる方がなんか自分に合ってるとは思ってます。
So I think we've had a pretty positive experience in Japan, and I think from that my daughter feels comfortable here and she can speak Japanese, and so as a result I think she's come to help some other kids maybe who can't speak Japanese or aren't familiar with living here. So for example, she had a friend who came here from the United States, and this little girl wanted to learn to play the piano, but she couldn't find a piano teacher who spoke English, and so my daughter volunteered to help her go to the piano lesson and translate for her and help her with her communicating with her teacher. And another time in the past she helped some other friends who couldn't understand at school their homework and things like that. So I think being able to function in 2 cultures and languages can be a really positive thing, can really help. I think I was really afraid at first, what's gonna happen? Is this gonna work? To be in the Japanese school system, is that gonna work? I was really scared, but I found out that there really wasn't something to be afraid of, and I kind of want people to know that maybe there's a chance to make some connections with other people and to really share our cultures with each other. We don't have to be so afraid of each other.
I don't hate Japan, so I want them to be friendly to any half people.
People may look differently than what you're expecting. Like I look American than Japanese, so people would expect that I'll be able to speak English fluently and other stuff, but it's not always true. Like my sister, she looks totally American, and she can't even say apple. She say apple, and that's really different. But she's also struggling with that, and I just want to say that it's complicating and it's really, really different than what it really looks like. So I understand that you might judge at the first look, but the more you try to know others, I think you would find more of a diversity and also how complicating and how the person struggled as being half.
Well, I'd just like to say that it's hard for me to say because I'm a foreigner and I'm comfortable with never being Japanese, but my kids who have direct lineage to Japanese, half of their family, their cousins, what I really want to say is that I think that the face of Japan, like what it means to be Japanese, is kind of changing in a positive way. So you don't have to have two Japanese parents to agree with Japanese values or understand how Japanese culture works. The prejudice which half kids face, hopefully people understand that half kids are just human beings the same as any other Japanese people, and they should be judged on their behavior as opposed to their looks or their name.
I just want people to realize that it doesn't matter if someone's mixed race or not mixed race. It doesn't matter what I am or what you are. What matters is the person that's inside, and you should just get to know that person and see what they have to offer. So then maybe we could stop looking at all the differences people have, and we can start looking at how we're all similar.
いやでも持ってきたものなんで、持って生まれてきたものなんで、その恥なければ自分自身が胸を張って、はい、その自分自身の意思の問題だと思うんで、僕はそう思います。
多分見た目で日本語話せないかなって思われてるんで、なんか気軽に声かけてみてほしいな。
友達に言われた外国人だから見られてるんだよとかって言われるんだけど、それがどこまで嫌なのかとか、どこまで許せるのかとかってありますか？
なんか外人って呼ばれるのがなんかあんまり好きじゃなくて、なんか外の人って感じで、なんか自分的には日本人だからなんか外から来た人ってなんか外に出されてる気分になる。
As a result of interviewing these 7 individuals, we can see that prejudice against multicultural people of all ages still exists in Japan.
In these modern times, natives should open their minds to non-natives who are taking residence within Japan and creating lives, as they are the new generation.
In conclusion, everyone we've interviewed agrees that they all just want to be accepted for who they are as an individual and not for what society sees on the outside.